Hey, good evening. This is Elizabeth Leah. This is my third AV log of the semester, and I chose an interesting subject for this one. It was social media, because social media is kind of one of the, defining factors of this generation, and it's being used more and more for different purposes. And so social media in relation to emergency management, there are lots of opportunities for social media to be an asset to emergency management. And so I just found 2 articles online that give pretty good examples of how this can be a good tool within the field of security and emergency management. The first one was from June 20th, so very recent, and it's called Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Give Statement About Radiation Alert. So in Georgia, they were doing a test alert, testing their alert system, and the alert came across the television. That's how they broadcast that test. There was some confusion about it amongst the community, which is good for them to know, because if there was confusion in the case of a real radiological issue, that could be very problematic, because time is always of the essence in a disaster scenario. And so there was people that weren't sure if it was a test or not, which is something that they can take and learn from. And they reached out using their social media pages, this article states, in response to the confusion whether or not it was a test. They used social media as a way to quickly communicate the fact that this was a test. There is no radiological issue. And they also, I believe, sent messages over the television, but they knew that using social media was a quick way to reach the widest audience. And they wanted to make sure that everyone knew it was just a test, as the picture shows, emergency test, just to make sure that their testing system was correctly notifying everyone. That's a very important part of emergency management, getting the message across to the public what they need to do, what the issue is, broadcasting that information in a manner that hopefully everyone can have access to. It's very important, because emergency management is for the people. It's, the whole emergency management cycle has to do with people. It's mitigation, planning, response, recovery. That's for a community. It's for cities, states, countries, and it deals with people. And if we can't get the word out in an emergency situation, that could be devastating, not just to individuals and families, but to whole communities and countries. So that's one example of, in Georgia, I believe that was Albany, Georgia, using the television as a way of broadcasting, but then also relying upon social media. The second example is actually an article from today, June 23rd, in Philadelphia. The article is titled Philadelphia Energy Solutions Refinery Fire Extinguished, Air Monitoring Continues. So obviously, pretty extreme circumstance. The refinery kind of exploded. There were about 3 explosions. And so there was a lot of confusion, because at the time it occurred, I don't imagine that there was any preemptive warning. There was no knowledge that this was about to occur. And so there were 3 explosions, and it has different testimonies from several different people, from the officials, from residents. There was a mailman going by. There was other individuals, and it gives their personal accounts and the shock and confusion. And one of them thought it was an atom bomb at first. And so that can definitely cause misinformation as well as greater alarm. And so social media can be used not just as a way to spread, information about what's going on, but ensuring that that information is accurate. And flipping towards the end of the article, just a little history on this. It says the Philadelphia Energy Solutions says the oil refining complex is the largest on the U.S. Eastern Seaboard, processing 335,000 barrels of crude oil daily. So that's huge. And, having these 3 explosions, that's a pretty big deal. And it was the second blaze at the refinery this month. Second, so it's not something that's never happened. June 10th, there was a fire, but there were no injuries reported. And so, knowing that this is a hazard, for this particular area, it's important to be able to broadcast that in a manner in which the public know, because the article goes into depth about some of the concerns that the public has about this plant, about air pollution and such. Let's see. There was a place in here, it mentioned social media. The Office of Emergency Management sent messages through social media telling people in the area to shelter in place. So that was a very important message that their EMA had to get out, because there were explosions, there was fire, there were active situations that the public needed to be careful about to decrease any more opportunities for injury or loss of life or even monetary damages. And so they didn't know necessarily if there would be another explosion, because a lot of this was happening as the fuel moved through the pipes in the complex. And so getting that message out that you need to shelter and you need to say where you're at, that was very important, and a great example really of how social media was used to convey that message to the public in a timely manner. And so those are just a few examples of how social media can be used by emergency management, and I'm sure as time progresses we'll see even more. Thanks.